Welcome, this is a special video in which I chose 1 hour of the best videos from this channel and made a 1 hour video of it. Also sub, please mother.
What's the most personal thing you're willing to share with us? Ever since I've become physically disabled, I feel like a huge burden on everyone in my life. If I weren't married, I'd just KO myself. My family wouldn't have to support me, and I wouldn't have to be in constant pain, missing my functioning body and ability to work. I literally miss being able to work retail, and retail is a special hell of its own. LOL, I'm still in my 20s and can barely walk even with my cane some days. I spent 23 years of my life in constant movement doing physical jobs, hobbies, everything, and now I have to relearn life without that. Oh, and in its place crippling pain. Plus, you lose so many people. At first people are nice and even supportive, but then they see you aren't improving. You're a bummer to hang out with, and it's a pain to have to plan around stairs and standing too long, and seating options. People talk to you in a weirdly condescending way, like you're a slightly dumb child everyone pities. I can't support myself and help my family like I used to. My old life is as gone as my bitty body. I hate my body so much sometimes it feels like an Iron Maiden around me. I just want one day without pain, but it won't happen. The only way to escape this pain would be to die, but then I'd be passing that pain to my spouse and family, and that's bitty too. So I'm stuck. I'm trying to find something in the ashes of my life to start anew, but it's so hard when I'm already physically weak and mentally ducked. I just don't know what to do anymore. Edit. I just want to thank everyone who has offered support and advice. This has been the most supported and listened to I've felt in years. Thank you, heart. My husband is in the position you're in, since he was 27. I love my husband to bits for who he is, not for what he can do. I don't care that he's unable to support me. Gradually he accepted his situation and now he often tells me how happy he is. I do hope that in time you'll be able to transform like we did and find even a greater happiness than you ever knew before. Please believe me when I say it's possible. I found out my mom's cancer has spread to her bones today. I just want to make sure she's able to keep as much comfort and dignity as she can with the time she may have left. Edit. I really am overwhelmed by all the kind words everyone has sent me. There's been so much good advice. You've not only helped me feel better about my mom, you've also helped me feel encouraged that kindness still exists in the midst of all this darkness, and that there's a lot of us going through the same stuff. Hug the ones you love and don't be afraid to be kind. Record some videos of you two talking. Things she'd like to share with you for the future, for future children you may have, life milestones etc. I'd do anything to have that from my father. There's a decent chance I may have multiple sclerosis. I've been having mild problems with balance, coordination and hand tremors for 6 months or so. Won't know much more until I see my neurologist again. Edit. Hey everyone, this post got way more popular than I expected. Big thanks to everyone for the support and suggestions. Really appreciate it. Here's more info. Saw neurologist for first visit. I'll go back in 2 weeks. Among blood tests they did, ANA was negative, C-reactive protein was mildly elevated at 5.8 mgl, B12 normal, vitamin D barely low but I'm correcting that. Brain MRI report mentions no lesions, but I have substantial belief I found something the radiologist overlooked and plan to discuss it with my doctor at next visit. Understanding the anatomy right, I believe there to be a substantial dark lesion and nearby enhancement from contrast in my left cerebellum peduncle, near the brain stem. If anyone's curious, it's posted here. I don't believe that can be explained by normal anatomy, but I'm not a doctor. I do have visual symptoms. My night vision is a bit degraded. I notice blurriness, especially around lights. I seem to have normal vision during daytime. Not sure about color balance, or if one eye is worse than the other. Edit 2. I believe my color vision is slightly worse in my left eye. When I compare the two, colors look slightly dull. Had a nuclear scan of dopamine centers to rule out Parkinson's. It was negative. Even if I'm right and what I found is a lesion, it's only one lesion and I know the diagnosis process can be complicated. Neurologist is going to do CSF analysis and peripheral nerve studies as well. It may be a while before I get a formal diagnosis, if it is indeed Ms. Hay. From someone who has recently gotten news about having Ms. I'm so sorry to hear you're going through this too. The process is slow and scary. If you want someone to talk to, I'd be willing to listen. I got PTSD last year from seeing my father get I'm so sorry, that's heavy. Have you had therapy? Not yet. I live inland in South Africa, which is very remote, so I can't, but I'm planning to in the future. If you need to get away, please get in touch. I run a B&B in Nisna. I lost my job yesterday. Layoffs? No, I'm a worker with bad habits and ADHD that I never bothered to learn how to deal with. I basically insulted the whole company with my inexperience, and my uncle who recommended me. This is small fish compared to a lot of you, but I recently started trying to teach myself piano. I'm terrible but getting better. I don't want to tell anyone because I get major anxiety and can't perform. Haha, yes, sex jokes. When I'm put on the spot. I'm afraid I'm gonna be stuck at my job for the rest of my life because I don't know what else I'm good at. It's not a bad job, but it doesn't really pay great and the hours are odd. It's not really something I want to be doing for too much longer, but I DK what else to do. I'm 3.5 years into the career I dreamed about as a child and I can't ducking stand it anymore. I have no backup plan and I feel guilty that so many people I cared about cheered me on to follow my dreams. Edit. The field is graphic design and I've just started working at my third company. What I am most struggling with is the work we are assigned to do is dull subject matter and all creativity is sucked out by client amendments. Throughout all the companies, the design team is villainized by the more client-facing roles and sales teams, with their team leaders often accusing us of insubordination for trying to uphold the brand guidelines. We work long extra hours with no reimbursement or praise and I'm really feeling the burnout. The people who cheered for you love you and want you to be happy. Similar position to yourself. Finishing university next week, doing a degree that I have hated since the start. Wanted to do this since I was young but have decided not to go into the field when I leave. Now I have absolutely no idea what to do. I too feel that I've let everyone down. People ask why I'm single and I tell them because I'm too busy or have no time. But the truth is, I don't know what a healthy relationship looks like. I always self-sabotage and do something wrong when I start seeing someone, and so it never really ends well all the time. I prefer to be alone since at least I don't get hurt. I am deeply similar. I'm terrified of being hurt, and even more so of hurting others. Being vulnerable just isn't something I'm good at when not anonymous. I have a few friends that are similar. The ones that overcame it had a good foundation of people they could talk to, that tell them the truth, not what they want to hear, and communicate openly. You will always attract what you put your mind to, whether good or bad. Today I cut contact with my ex-girlfriend for the sake of my mental health. I'm actually already feeling better. Edit. First off, thanks for the gold and all the upvotes. I didn't expect that, lol. Second, I need to clarify, my ex isn't and wasn't abusive. She's actually a really good person. I wanted to try and be friends like she wanted, but I really couldn't. I decided that the healthiest thing for both of us is to just stop talking. I have no ill will towards her. Those of you in a similar situation, I applaud you for being this strong. Best wishes. I'm 31 and still have 2 baby teeth. The tooth fairy is gonna be pissed. Please don't tell my boss. I'm here and I'm disappointed. I sharted on a blanket and threw it away. I played dumb to my girlfriend for about a half a year while she was constantly puzzled as to what happened to the blanket every time we sat down on the couch to watch TV. I finally broke down and confessed. I was evicted from my childhood home when I was 15. My mom couldn't keep the place up by herself after my brother moved out. She didn't know what to tell me, so she didn't. She had me take a bag with me when we went to my stepdad's for a weekend over the summer. A weekend turned into 2 weeks, turned into a month, and turned into the entire summer. Finally she told me what had happened, and because she didn't know how to tell me, she chose not to. I lost everything, and slept on stepdad's living room sofa for 2.5 years. It's one thing to have lost my material belongings that can be replaced like my computer, video game consoles and such, but I lost irreplaceable things like the memory box I started when I was 7, my childhood photos and all the dolls my dad had given me throughout the years. My dad has been gone 5 years now, and those dolls are something I wish if nothing else I could have saved. Edit. Thank you everyone for sharing and such. Yes, my mom did move with me to my stepdad's. She left all our things behind so she wouldn't draw suspicion, I guess. What is the stupidest conspiracy theory you've ever heard?
Just a really brief pause before we continue this really interesting video. I want to highlight this comment from my last video, which I thought was quite good, you know? So my video said, what would be like losing Notre Dame for your country? And this guy answered this. For America, about the equivalent of losing your car keys, except only to find them in your pocket 5 minutes later. Well, anyway, I thought that was kind of hilarious, but if you want your comment highlighted in my next video, write something funny or just straight up stupid in the comment sections. I like that stuff, right? Also, consider subscribing, just to miss when I post your comment. Well, XOXO, Gossip Girl. Oh, cute of it.
Hands down best conspiracy out there is former flat earth. In a nutshell, earth is round, obviously, but it used to be flat. In fact, it was flat right up until it was hit by the meteorite which wiped out the dinosaurs. See, the impact folded the flat earth round into a ball, and the dinosaurs? They are doing just fine, because they live inside the earth. I wish I was making this up. Honestly, that sounds like it would be an amazing Jules Verne-style adventure story. Formula 1 cars, amongst many other engine-powered vehicles including airliners, don't have engines and are powered entirely by releasing air out of pressurized tanks. There are a few videos on YouTube by people who appear to genuinely believe this. Not knowing how engines work is understandable, but thinking that it would even be possible to convince everybody of such a massive, easily disproven and pointless lie is insane. Leclerc's car was just running low on air pressure, I guess. There's another sun at the center of the earth. My grandfather knew I was interested in astronomy and, at one point, got me a book about that conspiracy theory. The earth was hollow, second sun in the middle, you could get to the inside at the poles. Big conspiracy to deny the truth. The whole shebang. But my contribution to this thread is the conspiracy theory espoused by a different book advertised in that book. The theory that women do not menstruate. Most conspiracy theories were born because somebody didn't want to use the phrase "hey, wouldn't it be cool if?" That we bombed Hiroshima to destroy the alien base underneath it. I've read a lot of crazy conspiracies before, but this is a new one. Same person told me that gun control doesn't matter because when the beings from the fifth dimension wage war on us, the guns won't be of any use. There are people alive that believe that there are aborted fetal cells in Coke and bull semen in Red Bull. Does that mean I can skip the sugar and just drink unadulterated bull semen for more efficient energy boosts? Oh, that's what 5-hour energy must be. The stupidest conspiracy theory I've ever heard is that Australia doesn't exist and is just a small island part of New Zealand. Also, planes that are going to Australia are supposedly filled with gas that makes you think that you're in Australia and they go to a small unknown island off the coast of England and the planes take you there. Also, it's supposedly made to cover up for the massive amount of convicts that drowned in the sea so that England's reputation isn't ruined. Last but not least, it's also called the greatest unknown genocide of all time. Like, what? Ah yes, the famously unsullied reputation of England. This reads like a Professor Layton plot to be haunted. The fact that mermaids exist and the government is just hiding it from us. Really, the fact that any mythological creature exists and is being hidden from us, why would the government start hiding them in the first place? The government is hiding them from us, considering there are bodies of water all over the world. This sounds like quite a large jurisdiction for a government. That, and it assumes that all of the mermaids have been rounded up and detained, meaning they can't be discovered by sailors now. The Illuminati is controlling all the governments, and they are hiding the mermaids because that's the only way to get into the center of the planet where all the mega rich people are, and they don't want us there because we'll discover the spaceship of the fifth dimensional lizard people. I'm gonna leave out the classics like chemtrails and whatever those people believe, but I used to work at Lush for a few years, and at least once a week, I had customers tell me, "What's causing cancer this week?" Once a woman asked me about our shampoos, so I showed them to her. She asked specifically for one without sodium lauryl sulfates, which makes sense if you have dry ass curly hair like myself, but hers was straight and greasy. She just didn't want them cuss cancer, and back then we still had one. So I showed it to her, mentioned that the base is basically banana puree, and she looked at me with the most shocked face I've ever seen in the store and said, "Do you even know how dangerous bananas are?" Honestly, I don't. Bananas are proven to cause cancer and being highly radioactive and toxic. How else would they stay yellow after weeks on a container ship and like? I was never snarky to customers, even crazy ones. But I was just so baffled that I just said, "Mom, they're being harvested while they're still dark green. I buy green bananas all the time," to which she rolled her eyes at me and said, "Yeah sure. They are harvested green," in that tone those conspiracy nut jobs always give you when you call them out, and left the store. LOL. I mean, she's not wrong about bananas being radioactive, but you'd have to eat 35 million of them in one sitting to get a lethal dose. Not just that, but any foods containing potassium are radioactive, and plenty of foods have more potassium than bananas. That the only reason this post was made was so that a secret organization could get a particular post to the top and make sure as many people as possible will see it as a stupid conspiracy theory, when it's actually true. Well, wrap it up guys. Looks like Big F1 is onto us. After the Columbine shooting, there was a conspiracy that there was an organized group of goth kids that were going to shoot up every school. Plus apparently video games cause violence. As a fan of the Mario franchise, I did have an urge to throw turtles at blocks though, but was rewarded when money would pop out. As a Minesweeper fan, I regularly die attempting to clear minefields. As a Skyrim fan, I'm a sophisticated member of the Thieves Guild and routinely steal people's sweet rolls. Oh, I'm also a member of the Dark Brotherhood and enjoy casually assassinating people. As a tabletop simulator fan, I regularly gather friends around a table to play board games. Wait. As a Zelda fan, I like to harass chickens and throw other people's pots around in hopes of finding money. Paul McCartney died in a car crash in 1966 and was replaced by a look-alike. The best part of the conspiracy is that replacement Paul is apparently much more talented than the original. The White Album, Abbey Road and Let It Be were all released by the Beatles after his death. Not to mention everything he produced with Wings and his subsequent solo work. The moon landings were faked so people wouldn't know about the aliens on the moon. And the Vietnam War was faked to hide the war against the aliens on the moon. Even better, the US made a secret deal with the aliens in order to beat the USSR to the moon in exchange for aliens being able to abduct any human so they could create a race of superior hybrids that could better survive the coming destruction of the Earth. By using the moon, which is actually a spaceship, in order to escape the solar system. But they'd need to go back billions of years first in order to build it and then replace it with a hologram so the rest of humanity is none the wiser about their impending doom. That hot singles in my area want to meet me. That glitch is always 2.9 miles away, too. I mean, if she lives there. I always see one that says there's a desperate hoe in your area and I'm like, OMG, that's me. Cheers for the gold. Finland doesn't exist. Those people actually live in East Sweden. There is nothing but ocean where Finland is supposed to be. That HIV is a fake disease created by the government to kill gays and heroin addicts. Granted, that's the extreme fringe end of the movement, whereas most AIDS denialists simply believe HIV doesn't actually cause AIDS, and that you can survive AIDS symptoms if you refuse to take the medicine which they believe makes it worse. They believe AIDS exists, but HIV doesn't cause it, and they claim HIV tests and AZT drugs were developed by Big Pharma to destroy people's immune systems with toxins. The Foo Fighters used to endorse this belief up until the 2000s and even had a charity concert for AIDS denialism. There was a magazine named Continuum written by AIDS denialists. Eventually, all the editors died of AIDS-related diseases. That the Chinese pump our food supply up with diabetes. Supposedly it's why Americans are so fat. Our beef and pork is full of Chinese diabetes. They launder the animals through Canada and led them through the border illegally. Literal cow caravans. It's why America doesn't allow much dairy from Canada. So diabetes is a physical substance now? That a swallow can carry a coconut. Some people claim that it could grip it by the husk, but it's not a question of where he grips it. It's a simple comparison of weight ratios. A 5-ounce bird cannot carry a 1-pound coconut. An African swallow might be able to carry it, but not a European swallow. I heard someone say that Australia exists. What the frick is wrong with people? Honestly though, Australia doesn't seem real to me sometimes. You got the rest of the world behaving like normal people, and then you have a ducking continent where people wrestle gators, name swim centers after drowned politicians, get babies eaten by dingoes, constantly battle insane wildlife, say all the time, getting into wars with, and eating, their national bird, and speaking a version of English that's indecipherable to native English speakers. Based on what I've heard of it, it's an entire ducking country of madlads who just give zero ducks all the time. Australia is the Florida man of the planet. Gravity only exists because we believe it, and the graviton was thought into existence basically. It's the same reason Australia only exists if we believe in it. The minute you'll realize a continent like Australia is on the bottom half of the planet, you fall off the earth. And I know what you're thinking. What about South America? Well, trees emit oxygen which pushes you up, and South America has many trees because rainforest. And now you're thinking, you don't scream at me. What about penguins? Simple. They're birds, so they're always flying up really fast, so they just look like they're standing on the bottom of the planet. The minute they stop flapping their wings, they'll fall off too. Which conspiracy theory is so believable that it might be true? That your phone's microphone is constantly hot and it's listening for keywords to target advertising. Most glaring instance where this happened to me was when I walked into a colleague's office. He had just gotten a standing desk, but one that goes on top of his existing desk rather than a standalone, pun, model. That's important to note. I said, nice standing desk. When did you get that? Thanks. Just today, he replied. That was literally all that was said about the desk. We talked about work-related stuff, and as I walked out and checked my phone, there was an ad on Facebook for that exact model of standing desk. I have never owned one, wanted one, or googled one before, yet there it was on my feed. Tinfoil hat be damned. They listen in. I've had this happen to me twice in the last month. Things I talked about with my daughter, one being hard-boiled eggs, showed up on my feed hours later. There it was, an ad for a hard-boiled egg cooker. Never googled anything about hard-boiled eggs. Weird af. I can't remember the first one. When I said something to my daughter about it after the first time, she called me crazy. When I showed her the egg thing, she said, well damn, you might be right. This isn't even a conspiracy theory. Stay on top of your app permissions, especially for Google services and apps. Background stuff especially. That Natcha giant was murdered by the Catholic Church for exposing a pedophile ring. This is trending on our conspiracy and are out off the loop right now. Credit to you update for the summary. Natcha Jate, a model TV journalist, exposed a pedophile ring on live Argentinian TV a few months ago, after following cases over the last few years. She had claimed that she would not commit suicide in April of 2018 while investigating these rings, but was found on the 23rd of February, 2019 to be dead from suicide. Another journalist she had accused of pedophilia on the airing, Luis Ventura, had uploaded an image of her dead body shortly after she killed herself on Twitter, and then promptly deleted it afterwards. To quote you, happy cake day one, she supposedly died from a cocaine overdose, heart failure, stroke. She had said that if she wound up dead, the people she had accused of rape, she was on trial, and it was powerful people, would be guilty. I won't kill myself. I won't overdose and drown in a bathtub. I won't shoot myself. Full credit to you. The next village for this one. The arms on Tyrannosaurus Rex skeletons are backwards. They ought to be rotated 180 degrees. What good are these stubby little arms for? We have found out relatively recently that T-Rex have feathers. It is now an established fact. T-Rex were not covered in scales but in feathers, like a bird. Take the arms on a T-Rex and flip them around 180 degrees. Now you have wings like an ostrich. Here is an illustration of an ostrich skeleton. See the small arms, wings. Now look at a Tyrannosaurus. We used to think of almost all dinosaurs as lizard-like. In fact, the name means terrible lizard. Now we know that many different animals that we think of as dinosaurs are more bird-like than lizard-like. XKCD comic below illustrates this nicely. Tyrannosaurus rex had wings. Not big wings to fly with, but wings that were perhaps something like that of an ostrich, cassowary, or emu, although likely much smaller in proportion to their body. Ostriches use their wings in mating rituals, to make themselves appear larger, and to signal and communicate. Perhaps T-Rex used theirs for some similar purpose. They did not have useless stubby little arms. My conspiracy theory. Facebook purposely attempts to ruin people's relationships because the drama gets more views and more views sell more ads. Several years ago they introduced a feature so that your comments on other pages would show up in your friends' feeds. So if you're secretly an atheist and you comment on some atheist page, it shows up in your devout Southern Baptist grandma Muriel's timeline, even though it's a conversation that has nothing to do with her and there's no reason for it to be. As a result, Facebook outs you to your family, and grandma is typing away at all the evil Satanists trying to corrupt her grandson. And if you comment on a public post, it's unavoidable. You used to be able to control who could see your comments even on public posts by other pages, but at the same time Facebook introduced their tattletale feature. They took that ability away. Now if they were to stumble across the same page they'd be able to see your comment. But after that change, Facebook started pointing everybody you know directly to it. Not to mention, the privacy settings are difficult to find, difficult to understand, and with each passing year gives you less and less control over who sees what. By forcibly combining everybody's social circles, Facebook is trying to generate conflict. They want to generate conflict because the conflict happens on Facebook, which means people logging onto Facebook more often and seeing more ads. They are essentially an internet tabloid, except instead of showcasing the personal drama of celebrities for clicks and sales, they are doing it to you instead. Ever notice how the vast majority of family drama, relationship fights, etc. these days happens on Facebook? That's by design. Facebook is literally destroying the social fabric to make a buck, consuming relationship stability like it's an oil refinery consuming crude. That's why you hide your real opinions on FB and share them on Reddit instead. Dyson purposefully made the cable shorter over time just before announcing the cordless version. My DC01 has a 12-meter flex, my DC14 has a 6.5 meters flex. They purposefully made the flex shorter to be an inconvenience and make people want the cordless version. Miley Cyrus's crazy streak was all a carefully planned marketing scheme to get her solidified as an A-list celebrity. I believe it was done to make Disney completely cut ties with her and kill the image of Hannah Montana. It's worked too. Hannah Montana was quite possibly Disney's largest TV show ever, but I haven't seen anyone even mention it for over 4 years now. And despite Disney cashing in on old IPs, Aladdin, Kim Possible, Lion King, etc., we have yet to even hear an unsubstantiated rumor regarding Hannah Montana. The Vatican holds horrible dark secrets and many answers to existential questions. And that Area 51 is a publicity stunt by the government to hide the real testing facility. I believe that Area 51 has some stuff that they wouldn't want getting out, but I think it's all pretty normal and the general public wouldn't find too shocking. It's definitely hyped up though to distract us from some other base where the real weird bit goes down. Long John Silver's is some kind of money laundering scheme on the basis that they have been open for as long as I can remember, but I have also literally never seen a busy Long John's. Toxic delusion that I ironically entertain? Perhaps. You clearly didn't grow up in a white trash family. LJS is a poor man's Red Lobster. We would eat fast food almost every night when I was growing up, and maybe once a month get LJS. It was a treat. Bro, those hush puppies were bomb. The president of the Philippines, Duterte, is very anti-drugs to hide his own involvements with drug cartels off which he makes billions. Funny enough, he once told supporters that, if his own children were found to be dealing in drugs, they should be executed. Not long after, one of his children was found to be involved with a big shipment of cocaine. If I recall correctly, still alive. I may be shaky on some of the details here, but I remember reading this on Dutert's Wikipedia page. I'm at work. We'll find the source later if anyone is interested. Edit. Thanks to everyone who has posted sources in the comments. I got some of the details wrong. Meth, not coke, etc. But the gist is accurate. Also, Dutert had a past drug issue with fentanyl that nobody really knows if he's clean from, and apparently smokes weed. That the CIA post this question every time so they know what the general public suspect. Redacted. Edit. Removed. Edit 2. Not the CIA. The Laurel Canyon Conspiracy. Basically, if you look at the counterculture revolutionaries in the music industry in the 60s, most of them were the children of military intelligence people. So the theory is that the free love, lots of drugs movement they inspired was done intentionally to distract the youth from a full-scale revolution. The thought was if the angry youth of the mid to late 60s were too high and getting laid all the time, they would stop caring as much about societal ills and then basically sleepwalk through the 70s. Which they did. I stumbled upon this when I was reading up on Jim Morrison and how his father was the one who called in the fake strike at the Gulf of Tonkin that kicked off the Vietnam War, and which was shown later to have been a false flag. Turns out, a lot of his contemporaries were also children of highly placed military people with ties to intelligence. Strange that they all wound up in Laurel Canyon as part of the same movement. Wow. Blew my mind too. I just assumed it was bullshit until I started looking up all of these famous musicians of the era and seeing their parents were mostly military intelligence. Too much ducking coincidence that their kids would all get into music, let alone all gravitate to the same canyon in Cali. What untrue fact did you believe was true for the longest time? When I heard about position 69, I assumed that meant there were at least 68 other sexual positions and all adults needed to know them by heart. Quick 43 sure thing, damn it, I forgot to study. If you accidentally do a 32 instead of a 42 then the injuries abound. Make sure you know your positions. That guys pee with the toilet seat up because they have the biggest butts. This was from when I was a small child. I had a potty seat. My mom used the toilet with the seat down, and my dad used the seat up. I just figured they were all size adjusters, like the potty seat, to how large your ass was. I love this one because it's not something a grown-up told you. You figured it out on your own. Kid logic is the best. As a kid I thought that when people kissed for the first time, the woman would start having babies at random. Whenever people kissed on TV I always thought, whoa guys, are you sure you're ready for this? When I was a kid, I thought that when someone died in a movie, that they actually died, for real. When I would watch a movie in which someone died, I would always wonder to myself, was this role worth dying for? Especially if it was a terrible movie, or if they were just an extra. How did the actor come to the decision that this would be their last role, and I would feel sad for the actor that they couldn't make movies, or be alive, anymore. In the early 80s my friend's big brother told us that while Kiss toured South America before every concert they would get a priest to come out and talk to the crowd about how bad the music was for their souls, and then the band members would come out and kill the priest. I wondered why the priests would apparently keep agreeing to this. When I was a kid, I didn't know the difference between gorillas and gorillas. In fact, I didn't even know the former were a thing. I also must add that Planet of the Apes was on TV, which I used to love watching. So when I watched the news in the evenings, I thought there was a war going on in Central America between humans and gorillas. Scared the bit out of me. I think a lot of people got confused at this one, especially if you were a child in the 80s when there was news about several guerrilla actions in jungle while looking places. That's what I thought. It was called guerrilla warfare because it was fought in the jungle like a gorilla would do. My dad had a moustache in his wedding photos. He told me it was his fake moustache for formal events. Why would I not believe him? If you ever get married you need to use this story on your wedding and put on a fake moustache. He should ask his dad to borrow the family mustache for something as special as a wedding. I was raised to think that water towers were for storing water reserves. Never knew that they supply the water pressure that we use until my freshman year of college. My mind was blown, and gravity is amazing. Sigh, today I learned. Same, but I'm also realizing that I actually had no idea at all what those were for and just accepted their existence at face value. Yeah, that's where they put the water. Way up there in the sky. That's just how you store water. There's nothing to wonder about here. Sky water has existed your whole life. It's normal. When you need to store a bunch of water, you would definitely put it in the goddamn sky. That's entirely convenient. I ducking hate myself for never even thinking about this. My kindergarten teacher told us that if you ate the black seeds while eating watermelon, the seeds would get stuck in your appendix. Eat too many watermelon seeds over the years, and eventually your appendix is full and can't take any more, and that's how you end up with appendicitis. At age 15, I was rushed to hospital with intense abdominal pain. When the doctor said I had appendicitis, I turned to my mum and cried, but I was so careful to never eat the watermelon seeds. We still laugh about that. Edit. It seems like a lot of you were told that swallowing watermelon seeds would cause a watermelon to grow inside you, but I wasn't deterred by that. Kindergarten me had a sneaking suspicion that the melon growing in tummy thing was just plain silly and unlikely to be a viable threat, but the appendix clogging, that bit seemed entirely plausible, which made it absolutely terrifying. That girl's periods were the color blue. Thanks TV commercials. As a kid I thought you smoked by blowing the cigarette, not sucking in. There was this commercial in the 90s warning of the dangers of huffing that I saw when I was 5 or 6 years old. It showed a cartoon nose sniffing what looked like something that smelled bad, since I had no idea what huffing actually was, which led to death portrayed by skull and crossbones. I thought if I smelled something that smelled bad I would die. I was a conscious mouth breather for years for fear of dying by stench. I told my little sister once that mongooses weren't real, just out of small child spite, while we were watching Rikki Tikki Tavi. Promptly forgot that I did so. Fast forward to over 10 years later, sister comes home from her first week as a freshman in high school pissed off. Evidently she got into an argument with her biology teacher involving the validity of mongooses in real life. Argued they were, as I had told her, mythical creatures, like unicorns. TLDR, sister spent 10 plus years believing mongooses weren't real. Eggnog comes from chicken milk. Thanks dad. When I was circa 5 years old, so early mid-90s, we were driving in a car and my dad drove over some of the bumpy reflectors in the road. I asked them what they were for and he straight-faced told me that some states put those down on the road so that blind people will know how to feel what lane they are in. Look around some more. You'll even see them on the shoulder of the road so they know when they are pulled over. And on we drove. And I was so happy we lived in a state that allows blind people to drive. Every state should do that. Then when I was about 13, we were driving down the road when my dad had to slam on the brakes. It was at that moment that I shouted from the backseat, "Wait a second. How do blind drivers know when to brake?" My dad replied, "What are you talking about?" I then recounted what he told me all those years ago, and that it couldn't work because they wouldn't know when to brake on time. My father went from angry at the emergency braking to laughing until he cried. It was that day my father completed his ultimate dad jokes and I became his apprentice. That cracking your knuckles is bad for you. Me and my sister were told this so many times. She stopped doing it. I still can't go 10 minutes without checking if all my knuckles are cracked. It wasn't until junior high that I found out the actual size and shape of a roadrunner is nothing like in the cartoons. Edit. Here's for all posters surprised that roadrunners are real animals. I was just as surprised to learn about narwhals. I always thought that pineapples grew on trees. I still haven't recovered. Edit. Thanks a million for the gold kind stranger. Wait, pineapples don't grow on trees? I mean hanging off trees like coconuts, but they grow like this. I can't handle this. It almost looks like they photoshopped that field of pineapple plants. I know it's not photoshopped, but my mind keeps saying that can't be how they grow. That you bought a baby from the hospital. I remember sitting in my first sex ed class thinking there is no way my parents did this to make me. When I was little and I asked my mom how people became pregnant, she said that God realizes that two people are married and he allows her to be pregnant. When I asked why our neighbor down the street was never married and had 2 kids, she told me that our neighbor got secretly married and just never told anyone. I thought peanut butter was green until I was 17 or 18 when I described a color to my mom as peanut butter green. If you didn't figure it out, I'm colorblind. Wish they would do color blindness tests in school, so we at least know. It seems most people discover their color blindness through some awkward situation later in life. I discovered mine when I kept accidentally killing my teammates in Worms Armageddon and Quake Arena. Edit. Turns out a lot of schools do, it seems. For those asking, I was in the UK. Don't know why my school didn't do any vision or hearing tests whatsoever. When I was around 5 years old, my mother told me that my dad, named Brian, was really named Briangelo, like Michelangelo, and I believed it until I was probably in middle school. It lasted so long because she told me not to talk about it because it was embarrassing for him. I love your mom. That laughing very hard could give you diarrhea. Turns out it was a coincidence I have Crohn's. The butt pipe was always going to open up. It's a complete coincidence that it happened right after the Red told a particularly funny joke and I ruined not only my burgundy sweatpants but also the carpet at synagogue. Is a Red like a rabbi? What's the difference? Also, condolences on crapping everywhere. My big brother convinced me that your appendix was your testicles. For years and years, whenever I heard someone was getting their appendix removed, I thought they were getting their balls removed. It gets worse. When I was about 10, 11, a girl in my class was out from school because she was getting her appendix removed. This led to an even dumber rationalization that girls had balls, but no penis. I can still picture in my head what my younger self thought a naked girl looked like. I remember being really confused when I saw my first porn a few years later. Edit. To answer 99% of the messages I'm receiving, no, I am not Cartman. Edit 2. Also, I am now well aware of the Popcorn Factory sketch. Edit 3. This is far and away my highest voted comment to date. I'd like to thank every female's nutsack for this honor.
Have you ever dated a celebrity pro athlete? What was your experience like? My ex was a minor league baseball player and became a quite famous big league pitcher after we broke up. He was signed at 17, we were both 18-ish when we dated. I would say it was a very physical but immature relationship. He was really attractive, still is, in super good shape. He has beautiful light-colored skin and light greenish brown eyes. He also got jealous really easily and was pretty possessive. He cheated on me with a 15-year-old while he was traveling for a game, claims he didn't know she was that young, and that she said she was 18. It was really weird seeing him all over TV when he moved up to the big leagues shortly after our breakup. It was also really interesting hanging out with the whole team when we were dating. Every single one of them thought they would be the exception and become the next Rod. Most didn't have any backup plans and blew through their signing bonuses really quickly on cars and partying. A few of the smarter, more mature ones were taking college classes online to have a backup plan to be a high school teacher, baseball coach, or things like that. Also, most of them had significant others at home that they were cheating on when they traveled. Our relationship was really immature, but I only ever wished him the best. He seems to have grown up a lot, but we aren't really in touch anymore. My sister met Michael Vick at a club in Charlotte, NC. His bodyguard actually chased after her as she and a friend were leaving to give her Vic's phone number. He took her out twice, then she learned from a magazine that he was engaged, though he swore he wasn't marrying that girl he did. On the third and final date, she found medication for herpes in his bathroom. After that, she ended the budding affair, and hopefully, that was a lesson learned. She was lucky not to get herpes from that jerk the way that a couple other unlucky women did. I was very close friends with the strength coach of an NFL team and spent some time hanging out with the players both on the road and at home. 75% of them, based on my observation and my friends' stories, are cheating dirtbags. Women in every port, sometimes babies too, and the what happens on the road, stays on the road code if silence runs rampant. I wouldn't date or trust a professional sports player to be in a monogamous, honest relationship as far as I could throw them. I often suspect that these are unwritten deals that are made between athletes and wags. She gets the lifestyle, he gets the family man image, but honestly it seems like a huge ask for a fit, attractive, famous man in his 20s to not duck a lot of attractive women who offer it up on a platter. I've hooked up with or dated handful of Warped Tour level musicians. Stereotypically, a few were interested in the fact that I was 18 and ready to hook up. Others were interested in sexting throughout a tour and then they ghosted. Two of them, though, I dated and even after breaking up, were still good friends. I hooked up with an NHL player once, too, and he was a duck boy, Mao. He wanted me to tell him how hot he was over and over. Dated a kiddos TV actor while his show was big. Could never watch him work because obviously the show is for kids, so he was very weird and animated when acting. Was still on good terms, amicable split. We broke up just as I was starting to get fan heat. The show had some adolescent fans too. I dated a professor NBA player for a while. And they all cheat. Women are very replaceable to these men, and they will let you know. Most of the time I just felt like I was arm candy, but it's easy to confuse a good guy and a great time with a great relationship. I realized I was actually miserable one day and that in comparison to everyone I've ever dated, he was the lamest boyfriend I had. Okay, so I realize this does not exactly count because we started dating way before he was a pro, but I am engaged to an NFL player. However, I have been around other athletes enough to know what goes into their dating lives. Just know a few things. First of all, their schedules are insane. I know everyone has their crazy busy lives, but during the season I see my FIANG registered trademark paragraph sign long enough to hold a conversation once a week, twice on home game weeks. But this is also because I work evening hours. Every sport is different, but if you are dating one and have a lot of down team waiting around to hear from them, no, it owes not you. Just do not go sending them constant messages because you've seen Thato's the number one thing that drives those guys crazy. They do not have time for that and will make time for you when they can. They will have all the time in the world for you when the season is over. They are real people too, and they love a good girl who is smart, down to earth and sees them for who they are, which is not always just being good at sports. But do keep in mind you're their number one fan and will go to great lengths to defend people who have no clue what they are talking about. Sports fans are crazy. You will know more about sports than you ever cared to possibly know. Remember that even though they seem super important, you are just as important and are dating them too. You've seen girls who stuck it out with athletes too long even though they were not compatible just because they were dating an athlete. If ho's not treating you right, let him know and get out. If you do find your person, the perks are amazing. We've traveled everywhere together and I feel like the luckiest girl in the world every single day. And we're going to the Pro Bowl next week and I get to support him there every step of the way. I might have gotten a little carried away, but I was so excited to find a question I can relate to. Good luck on your date. Do not be nervous, just be your confident self. I hooked up a couple of times with the singer of an American 90s alternative rock band. They're not that relevant anymore, but they still tour through the US almost every year. Some years they go worldwide. I was at their concert in my city when they toured through Europe and got into first row. During the concert, some crew member asked me if I wanted to come backstage after the show. When I got backstage, the singer and I immediately got along really well, and after a night of partying we ended up having sex in his tour bus. After that, he wanted to stay in touch and asked for my phone number. We texted each other every few days for quite some time, and one day he invited me for a weekend trip to a city where his band had a gig at. We spent the weekend doing some sightseeing, eating together, watched some Netflix, sleeping and waking up in the same bed together, kind of couple-ish stuff. It was kind of a weird experience. You expect some crazy special stuff is going to happen, but I guess even rock stars are just regular men whose pits are small when they're limp. Lol. Yes. Dated a minor TV film celebrity for 4 years. The income disparity was frustrating. I felt constantly broke around them. They did not live on my plane of reality and were very entitled due to being born into wealth. Rude or thoughtless to people around them sometimes. Had no concept of working for a living. grew frustrated that I could not just take off work for 2 months to jaunt around the world with them. Did not understand my limited number of vacation days. Could not empathize when I was stressed from making ends meet. Never had to budget or tired from cleaning my house all day because they had nannies and maids. Used money to express love and could not grasp why jewelry did not make me feel better when my dad had a stroke. Basically a bad relationship. Outside that we had a lot in common and had fun, but the bad points slowly outweighed the good once the honeymoon phase was over. Realized I much prefer someone down to earth and within my tax bracket. Wow, I am surprised the relationship lasted 4 years. He was an actor comedian and we were involved briefly. The only thing about his fame was he was extra anxious about sending me nudes. Though I later learned he's actually a big duck boy and a cheater, and one of the reasons it was so easy for him to be was he was very secretive about his relationship and explain it to the girlfriend as I want to keep my private life private from the public. It wouldn't be good for my career. In reality, it was because he was a serial cheater, cheating on his girlfriend. And when he was single, he was dating a lot of women at once, but they all thought he was only seeing them. I slept with a pro-Australian rugby union player and a South African rugby union player several times. Lots of cocaine. Just lots of partying and cocaine in the off-season. Rugby players are the biggest cokeheads I've ever run into. I dated a somewhat famous actor for a few months. We met at a charity event and instantly hit it off, arguing about hockey. He was luckily quite chill about his celebrity status and very down to earth. The weirdest part was having people interrupt dates to take photos, or yelling out a line he said in a TV show when they saw him. Shooting schedules and our trips were ultimately what ended it. Hard to form a solid relationship when he's always out of town.
Cops of Reddit, have you ever pulled over a celebrity? If so, who was it? What did they do? And how were they? I once pulled over Jennifer Aniston for driving recklessly. I was super surprised to see her because I've always been a huge fan of Friends. And when she started bawling telling me about how Brad Pitt was talking to Angelina Jolie, I was stuck between wanting to comfort her and give her a ticket, so I just told her I knew where she was coming from. Ducked up exes. And that she should stay strong because he obviously didn't value her, and I told her I loved her in Friends and she thanked me and drove away before I could pull myself together. Will not let something like that happen again. Yes, she is a good actress. Do you think the crying was real, or was she just getting out of a ticket? I think she played him. Worked a case in the Coast Guard that helped locate and assist Brody Jenner when he went out on his boat, or friend's boat, I don't know, and ran out of fuel and supplies and did not come back in time. I spoke with, still then, Bruce Jenner and Chris to help contact him. They were very nice and appreciative, while also being cooperative and forthcoming. Not everyone who you save is the most responsive when it comes to obtaining information to help locate and contact a missing person. Never pulled over any celebrities, but I have had some run-ins with two on the job. Had dinner at a table next to Kristen Stewart, really down to earth. And went to Dave Franco's house. Never really mentioned to him that I knew him. Just thought I'd do my business real quick and let him get back to his life. Nice guy. Also did a small security detail for Dave Grohl. Was too shy to tell him I was a fan. Felt like I had to remain professional, but good God, that man is a legend. I have so much respect. He's such a good guy and loves his fans. My dad claimed he pulled over Denzel Washington one time in the late 90s. It was some minor infraction like making a right on red when there's a sign saying you can't, or failure to yield, or something like that. Dad recognized him immediately and said something like, well, I know who you are and I'm pretty sure there's no warrants out for you, so try to be more careful. Yeah, for his part, Mr. Washington was apologetic and said he was having trouble figuring out where he was going. MapQuest wasn't a thing yet, so Dad gave him directions and left him go on his way. I like the part where you called him Mr. Washington. Former police cadet and dispatcher here. I was on a ride along and was told this story. So this officer pulls this car over for speeding. She then suspects the driver of being drunk. She calls in his driver's license to run it. The dispatcher tells her, you have Nick Nolte pulled over? Do you know who he is? He's a movie star. The officer is young and doesn't know who Nick Nolte is. Turns out he wasn't drunk. He was just being Nick Nolte. She gave him a warning and sent him on his way. I mean, if it was Nick Nolte, he may have still been drunk. Dude was a major alcoholic. He probably still is drunk, lol. From the time of the pulling over until right this moment. D'Angelo Russell. He was respectful and didn't mention who he was. I didn't know it was him till I recognized his name and looked him up. I let him go with a warning on some chicken bit window tint traffic stop. I'm a Nets fan. To see him getting complimented by being respectful makes me happy. Cop. The closest I can come to this was when I used to work the door at a college bar. At the time, there was a football player from the college who had gone on to the NFL and done well, but still liked to come back to that bar for whatever reason. The only problem was that the guy was a massive hole. Management had kicked him out several times for general quirkery but had withheld banning him because of his celebrity. Finally, one night he groped a waitress and they had enough. He was a skill player, so he wasn't huge, but he rolled with absolute giants. I remember kicking him out on a couple times and thinking, if they decide to fight, this will be interesting. Superstar would always drop his own name like we didn't already know him, but the big guys were universally understanding and polite. Thank God. The really big football players have the least to prove and in my experience are the nicest guys. Friend tended in a dive bar in North KC. A Chiefs lineman used to frequent the place. Said he was nice most of the time. The rest of the time he was ripping up bar stools that were bolted to the concrete floor. I have a second cousin who was drafted as a lineman but never made a team. He is the nicest guy you would ever want to meet. It can really go either way. Not a cop, but I have a good story. I was in Italy, really long time ago. Was sleeping in the car with my then boyfriend because we didn't have money for a hotel. Cop car stops next to us and motions to pull down the window. He starts speaking in rapid Italian. Problem is, we don't speak Italian, he doesn't speak German. I am German. He then speaks even faster, grabbing me by the collar and shoulder, kind of hitting my chest with his fist and so on. At last he gives up and beckons us to follow his car. We end up in the yard by a police station. The cop signs to us to sleep here. We are confused but think maybe in the morning they will have someone who speaks German or English. So next morning new cop asks us inside. We are given breakfast. More confusion. Then they tell us the reason we were pulled over. Kind of. In the area we were sleeping a serial stiller was at large who was stilling couples in cars. The cop was trying to show me how I could be dabbed by him. So that's the story how I nearly met the famous monster of Florence. Not a cop, but I was working as a lifeguard and we had the beach red flagged. No swimming. For rough surf. There was this girl swimming, so I hopped on my ATV and headed down to call her out of the water. Her swimming was weird. I couldn't put my finger on it right away. Part of determining whether or not I have to rescue someone is to evaluate their swimming stroke. She wasn't in obvious distress, just swimming around in her weird sort of way. I blow my whistle to get her attention and she starts swimming back to shore. At this point I should probably mention that we had a surf contest going on and there were a bunch of pro surfers in town because of it. She walks out the water and at this point I realize why her swim stroke was weird. She only has one arm. Now I've got to tell Bethany Hamilton that the water is too rough for swimming. Not many people are going to know she lost an arm to a shark bite and then went on to become a successful professional surfer even after the attack with literally only one arm. Okay, they did make a movie about her, so maybe more than I expect. Coin toss. Not me, but a friend who was a DPS officer in Arizona near Kingman. Pull over a guy in a Porsche going way too fast. Friend who was a football fan noticed who it was. Dan Pastorini, QB for the Houston Oilers. Friend was a Denver Bronco fan. Pastorini says something to the effect of, "Hi, my name is Dan Pastorini." Friend then proceeds to say, "Hi Mr. Pastorini, please give me your license and registration." Ends up giving him a ticket. I worked in mall security for a while and got a call to go to the Sunglass Hut because of a suspicious guy. Once I got in the store I noticed the only people inside were Danny Trejo and what I think was his daughter. I stayed in the store and the surprise on the employee's face when he bought like $3,000 in glasses was pretty funny. Also just want to put out there he is an awesome guy. He used to come to my neighborhood on Halloween and walk around with the kids trick-or-treating. I do so love me some Danny Trejo. Very jealous. I pulled over this guy for speeding. I asked him if he knew why I was stopping him. He said it was because of the way he was dressed and that he was black. I told him he was speeding. I asked him for his license and registration. I asked if he had any weapon or anything and to step out of the vehicle. He told me he wasn't going to get out of the car and that he knew his rights. I remarked that he seemed pretty smart and maybe he should look for a new career. He seemed pretty smug until I mentioned that I was calling for the K9 unit to come check out the car. Damned if it didn't turn out to be 50 Cent when I ran his license. Guessing this is as close as you're going to get. Saw a high-profile rapper that was also a gang member in court. He brought like 40 people including one guy that was willing to take the rap for him under oath even though the judge warned him he could be charged. He brought a big shot record producer, a car crash expert to say the police were lying about him ramming the police, and a bunch of BS witnesses, all to get out on bond so he could go perform. Sadly the judge granted his bond. Not a cop but Dave Mirra hit my car. Co-worker pulled over Dave the Hammer Schultz of the 70s Philadelphia Flyers. Didn't know who he was despite apparently having a bunch of Flyers memorabilia in the vehicle. Ticket was given. Surprisingly co-worker didn't lose any teeth. I have a story. Not a pullover but I do have to very vague about it. Basically I wouldn't let him into a highly restrictive area. He decided to make more of a scene about it than it needed to be. He was rude and then proceeded to point me out to some important folks that I wasn't letting him have his way. They did nothing and he left. Shortly after he left some people that witnessed this were quite surprised and said how much of a quirk he was being. People can be quirky but you don't have to be an asshole just because being a celebrity doesn't get you where you want all the time.